All right, here we go. This is the chapter 12 lecture video. And of course, as you can see, it's all about sustaining aquatic biodiversity. And often the challenge of that is out of sight, out of mind, right? As humans, it takes, a lot of effort to study aquatic biodiversity. Why? Because of course we need to bring our own oxygen with us. We have pressure issues. We need to bring lights if we're going to depths and all kinds of things. So, all right, so here we go. So in this chapter, right, it starts with a case study of Lake Victoria. Now, Lake Victoria is one of these tragic examples of people thinking that they were going to do something good, and it turned out what they didn't know. It actually turned out to be something really bad. In summary, Lake Victoria has lost their endemic fish, these cichlid populations that are found nowhere else, right? These specific ones. Due to this large predatory fish that they purposely brought to the lake. All right, so what happened in Lake Victoria? Again, now this is a lake in Africa. Well, here's the deal. They purposely brought in the Nile perch with the hopes of catching it and then selling it, right? So to make some money off this. All right, well, some things about this. First of all, you saw from the picture how big it gets, right? And if you could imagine, how does a fish get this big? Well, by eating a lot of stuff, right? So it eats whatever it wants, right? Once it gets to a certain size, basically. So first of all, so they bring this fish in here. One thing to consider, though, or maybe they didn't consider, is that when you catch it and to preserve it, they would smoke the fish, right? And so where are you going to get that from? Well, of course, cutting down trees. So they cut down a lot of trees nearby, which then, of course, you could then have the land's more erodible. And then as that runs in, it brings nutrients, which then also can lead to algal blooms, right? And so lots of algae and water hyacinth, which then can grow on the surface, as it says, and you can then block sunlight from going, further down. Less sunlight, less photosynthesis, less oxygen in the water, right? And now sort of this full circle, ironically, the Nile perch is now in decline because it's eaten so much, right? So for a very short-term gain, there has been a huge loss of biodiversity, and now even the Nile perch is in decline. All right, so anytime we want to consider even the possibility of bringing a new species over, we really want to probably not do it, frankly, right? Just because sometimes it's the unknown that can be so problematic that sometimes it's best just to avoid it. All right, so aquatic biodiversity, as I said, we know fairly little about the biodiversity of the world's marine and freshwater systems. It's a challenge for us to study, right? The greatest marine biodiversity occurs in coral reefs, estuaries, and the deep ocean floor. So we want to make sure that those are healthy and protected. Biodiversity is high near the coast and surface because of habitat and food source variety. So to make the point about how we know fairly little about the biodiversity of the world's marine, let me just share this with you too. Look at this story. So a couple was walking on the beach, right? And they see this huge thing that has washed up. They call the officials and they're like, what is it? And they're like, well, it's a jellyfish, but we have never seen it before either, right? So giant jellyfish, previously unknown to science. Look at that thing. It's over 5 feet wide. And so it's like, oh, we didn't know that was in the ocean. Understand that, there's a lot for us still to learn and know about what's in there as far as species and the working dynamics of it too. Okay. All right, and again, the world's marine and freshwater systems provide important ecological and economic services, but we are seeing a decline in many species. Now, so for example, the bluefin tuna. If you like sushi, apparently the bluefin tuna is the best, right? So highly prized, highly sought after, especially in places that really like sushi, like Japan. What would you guess, without me showing you, would be the record price ever for a fish? Think about it. Now, tuna, it's a big fish, okay? But what seems reasonable? Think of a number, and let me see what you came up with there. Did you come up with $1.76 million? There's the fish right there. It's a big fish, but 1.76 million. Like, I'm guessing you didn't, right? So now that does a couple things, doesn't it? Number one, what does that suggest about the availability of bluefin tuna? Now, let me back up from this too. How often this will work when they catch these fish, they will often go to like an auction, and representatives of different restaurants will be there and they can sample it. And then apparently this one was just fantastic. And for lots of different reasons, the prices went up and up and up. Now, but it does suggest, doesn't it, something about the availability of this fish. You know, if you had to guess, supply and demand, are there a lot of fish like this? No, there are a few of them, and so the price goes up. You know, all right. Okay, and so obviously as we overfish this, then we're losing its ability to do what it does, its niche in its ecosystem. Okay. All right, so let's go back here. Right, so human activities have destroyed, disrupted, degraded a large proportion of the world's marine, coastal, and freshwater ecosystems. About 20% of the world's coral reefs have been destroyed. Now remember, these are like the nurseries of the ocean, right? So many species that live in our coral reefs that they feed, they breed, they, that's their home and so forth. During the past 100 years, sea levels have risen about 10 to 25 centimeters. Most of that actually is from thermal expansion. When water is warmer, it too expands. Okay, so that's the biggest reason for sea level rise. Remember also, as it's warmer, we have land-based ice that melts, and as that flows in, that too will increase sea level. But the biggest reason has been what's called thermal expansion. All right, also, we've destroyed more than a third of the world's mangrove forest for shipping lanes also. All right. So why are we so good at catching fish, right? Or, well, the technology's improved so much, like long are gone are the days of just a single, fishing rod, right? We have trawler nets that can be thrown in, sink to the bottom, and essentially scrape everything off the bottom, right? And then you kind of bring it up, and the stuff you want, you keep. The stuff you don't want, you throw back, right? And it's called bycatch, sometimes known as bykill, because often those things, as they're being dragged along or in this, in these devices, it can end up damaging, hurting, possibly killing and injuring, right? Whatever it was that was in there. All right. Or just long drift nets and spotter airplane and fish finder sonar. We just have so much great technology that helps us, get as many fish as we can. All right. So let me share this quick summary fishing video with you here.
A bottom trawl is a type of fishing net that's pulled along the sea floor. Fishermen commonly use bottom trawls to catch shrimp and bottom-dwelling fish like halibut and sole. In addition to these target fish, however, the nets also catch a variety of ocean life that's usually thrown back, dead or dying. Dragging heavy gear across the seabed can also damage sensitive seafloor habitat. Reducing the harmful effects of bottom trawling requires either modifying the fishing gear or limiting the areas where trawling is allowed to protect sensitive bottom-dwelling organisms and their habitat.
Okay, so again, that was a decent summary, and you can imagine then, of course, why those trawler nets could be so damaging. So again, harmful invasive species are an increasing threat to marine and freshwater biodiversity. We call them bioinvaders, right? These living things that come in that are new to the area are blamed for about 2/3 of fish extinctions in the U.S., right? from between 1900 and 2000. To add to that problem, right, to compound on it, right, is that about half of the world's people live on or near coastal zones, and about 80% of ocean water pollution, remember, originates on land, right, and then washes in. So as we have so many people living on the coast, and we get it, right, we have so many lakes around here, we understand why people want to live by water. There's a lot of advantages, not only for recreation, that kind of stuff, but also for, shipping, and so there's lots of reasons for it. And so as the human population grows, we see more people moving toward these areas, which then, unless we are making sure we're keeping track of and not allowing this pollution, right, we would expect this pollution, to continue and probably increase as well. Right. Unfortunately, a lot of people look at the ocean as just a big garbage can, right? Meaning that, hey, dilution is a solution to pollution, or sort of out of sight, out of mind. Plastics, one of the great things about plastic is its durability. That's also one of its problems, right? It doesn't break down, it breaks up into small particles, or something like this, animals can get trapped one way or another with it. And so each year, plastic items dumped from ships and left as litter on beaches threaten marine life. Maybe you've heard of something called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now, in the Pacific, the way that the current flows, it acts almost like a toilet bowl, if that makes sense, right? It kind of swirls around, and then sort of, a lot of it will wash up on these beaches. And this, I'm going to show you a quick video in Hawaii. So let me share this with you here. All right, so just before I play this to it, I could imagine, or you could maybe imagine, if you lived on a shore someplace, right, by a body of water, and every day other people's plastic, other people's garbage washed up, that would probably be pretty frustrating. So, all right, let me share this with you.
Everybody knows, you think of Hawaii, they think of, palm trees, beautiful green, turquoise blue water, beautiful sunsets. We've been trying to kind of hold it all together and keep it paradise.
In harsh contrast with most of the beautiful Hawaiian beaches, Kamilo Beach on the south side of Hawaii Island is littered with plastic and marine debris, tarnishing what used to be pristine shores. Much of the beach is made up of trash pulled in by ocean currents from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch between Hawaii and Northern California.
This is some of the most beautiful coastline in all the world, and it would be such a shame to see it damaged in a way like this.
Locals shared childhood memories of this beach as a clean, family-friendly environment. Today, Kamilo has changed. The community here is gathering together with their small vans and trucks to take out the garbage from Kamilo Beach and tackle this problem all together. Community groups had just finished cleaning up the beach, but the sand is still littered with marine debris. According to locals, this is the cleanest this beach has been in recent years, and storms can stir up what lies on the ocean floor, making the beach look like it's never been cleaned.
So just taking my son down to Kamilo Beach and him sitting in the sand, and I see him pull something out, and I think it's a rock or something, and he sticks it right in his mouth, and I grab it just in time to see that it's a rusty hook. Old fishing line, plastic trash, cigarette butts, it's just not a family-friendly Ohana environment.
Since 2003, Hawaii Wildlife Fund and hundreds of volunteers have worked to remove tons of marine debris from along the Ka'u coastline, the vast majority of which comes from the ocean. And it's places like California, Washington State, Oregon, Japan, Taiwan, Korea. We've pulled off 145 U.S. tons of rubbish, so that's 290,000 pounds over the last 8 years off of this stretch of coastline. Marine debris is a people problem. Because of that, people need to be involved in the solution.
This community is struggling to keep up with the world's trash that's floating into this once beautiful beach with every tide.
This is Lucy Rosado reporting for Grassroots News.
So I can only imagine how frustrating that would be to say, hey, this isn't even my trash, it's everyone else's trash, like knock it off. And again, what we see are the plastics that stay around for so long, even if they do wash up or if they don't, you know, if a fish can eat something, right? They see something floating, they think it's something they can eat. And of course, it will just go into their bodies, which could block up the digestive tract. And or if they have toxins, it can release those toxins into the fish or to the animal. What impact will it have on that animal and or the animal that eats that animal, including humans? Right, about 75% of the world's commercially valuable marine fish are overfished, right, or near their sustainable limits. We see big fish are becoming scarce, like we saw with the tuna. Smaller fish are next. So we throw away, on average, about 30% of the fish we catch. Like, oops, we didn't mean to bring it up in the net, right? That's bycatch. Or something to consider, right, with shrimp that are on the bottom. For every 1 pound of shrimp they bring up, about 4 to 6 pounds of bycatch, right? Needlessly, we are killing sea mammals and birds that get caught in the lines, the nets, and so forth. All right, next, to make you aware of an issue right now, remember how wolves were a top predator in Yellowstone and how important they were, that one species. Well, the shark population is being decimated worldwide. And much of it is going after what's called shark fin soup. Shark fin, right? So there's a price that can be paid, right, or for selling shark fin. And on the one hand, some people and countries will look at sharks like any fish, meaning you can catch them and harvest them. However, they say, okay, if you're going to do that, you need to bring the whole animal back in. Well, what we find is that, of course, sharks are huge or can be huge. And so what they're doing, some of them, is they're catching the sharks, sawing off its fins, and then throwing the body back overboard, it potentially often still alive. And it's an illegal practice. But again, its enforcement can be difficult. You could imagine from a logistical standpoint, if I said, hey, your job is to patrol the ocean, it's so massive, you know, that it's difficult to do. So people that do this so often will not be caught, or if they're going to be caught, sometimes they'll just dump everything overboard, as you can imagine. So let me share this video with you. So, you know, this is about 6 minutes, and this is one of those video clips that it's difficult to show. I wish I, in some ways, didn't have to show it. It's going to show the sawing off of some of the fish fins. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to, right? But at the same time, though, I think it is something that as we sort of bear witness to this, then we know what's going on. And as we know better, hopefully we'll do better. And of course, we can also tell other people about it. And I think generally speaking, as people know better, they do better. And so if maybe someone's out and they see, hey, shark fin soup, they're like, wait a minute, I don't want that. And hey, and maybe you don't want to order that either because of these reasons. Remember, it's easy to only look at the person that's doing the catching of the sharks and cutting off their fins. But remember, equally involved are the people that buy it, either the restaurants, the cooks, but also the consumers, because ultimately that's why all this is being done too. So here we go.
Sharks evolved over 400 million years ago into one of nature's most graceful, streamlined, and simply beautiful predators. They play a vital role in keeping the delicate marine ecosystems in balance. But then, only 45,000 years ago, modern humans appeared and spread like a killer virus, devouring much of Earth's resources to feed an ever-growing human population and greed. A prime target is sharks. The delicate scale in the oceans is tipping fast, and for all their perceived menace, sharks are extremely fragile and in deep trouble. Advanced technology and improved fishing practices ensures that practically no fish escape being harvested. A recent scientific report projected the collapse of all fisheries by the year 2050, and as traditional fish stocks decline, shark catches are increasing. Already, over 110 shark species on the International Red List are threatened with extinction, mainly because of lack of fisheries management. As a marine and shark conservationist, I've been working very closely with sharks for many years. I've grown to care for them and understand how severe their plight is and how much they need our help to survive. It's therefore important for me to understand the local shark fishery. José's longline operation, though smaller, operates exactly the same as all others worldwide. At night, his crew set a whopping 40-kilometer line to which 1,300 hooks are attached, targeting blues and mako sharks. The next morning, they begin hauling the line in, with sharks mostly alive attached. Contrary to popular belief, sharks do feel pain, but unlike mammals, which are slaughtered in abattoirs by prescribed techniques, no such legislation applies to the slaughter of fish. On this particular day, they caught 2.5 tons of sharks, which is about 100 individuals. This is a perfectly legal operation, and finning is allowed, provided José returns to the harbour with each carcass and its fins.
It's very difficult for me not to get emotional watching all of this. Just the amount of these beautiful sharks that have been taken out of the water is quite something to witness. And then just to think that this is actually a very, very small boat, and the amount of sharks that they're taking out in comparison to the larger vessels out there is minuscule.
Many of these larger foreign fishing vessels have been found guilty of illegal fishing practices in the past. In 2003, they were prohibited from entering our waters to fish, but many are now back through joint ventures with the South African tuna and swordfish permit holders. The motivation is that they have bigger vessels and superior skills, which will ensure good catches. Based on these catch records, the international fishery organizations, which manage these global stocks, will award South Africa good future quotas. But true to their reputation, an independent observer, Ray Manning, which was on one of these foreign vessels, witnessed illegal fishing practices. What's more, he managed to get actual proof of illegal finning taking place.
Whole of the Africa East Coast is being exploited. They cut all the pectoral and the dorsal fins off the shark, and then they just drag the shark over the side and chuck it back into the water. The sharks are still alive. They're actually still fighting when they go over the side. And they will sink to the bottom and then die slowly or be attacked by other sharks. It's actually incredibly cruel, and it's against international law and against the permit conditions for these boats. And this is inside our territorial waters, in fact, within 25 miles of the coast. There were 3 boats fishing with the boat I was on. The other observer, after my experience, reported that the fins on his boat had all been dumped over the side.
Dried fins that fetch up to $300 a kilogram on the Asian market is an attractive motivation to break permit conditions, but they're not the only ones breaking the law. Apparently, there are other foreign vessels illegally fishing in our waters. Evidently, lack of proper management and inadequate compliance lies at the heart of the local problem. A way forward is for South Africa to implement the National Plan of Action that provides the guidelines for the conservation and management of our sharks. Currently a document drafted in 2000 and since aptly coined the National Plan of Inaction. Many shark species have declined by 90% due to overfishing. They simply can't keep up with the demand because they grow slowly, mature late, and have few young. We have little to fear from them. They have everything to fear from us. And it is government's duty to fulfill its obligation to help save our sharks. Everything is connected. Since sharks play such an important role in keeping the marine ecosystems in balance, If the oceans are depleted of them, it will have severe repercussions on the millions of people that depend upon the oceans for food. We need our sharks for these reasons, and for the simple joy of knowing that some of the most highly evolved animals in the world are still out there.
So, tough images to see and tough little short documentary to watch for sure. We have to remember that these are living things that have been on this planet as far as species like for hundreds of millions of years. And the thought of us decimating, taking out these species, what impact will that have on that ecosystem? And honestly, it's like, well, who knows? You really have to try to study this. And studying the ocean, as you know, is difficult, and sharks. And so we're learning more, but the obvious answer probably is it's not good. All right, so now to go from this, I always think how amazing it is what we're all capable of, right? We have capable of something like this, people illegally catching these sharks, cutting the fins off, throwing the body overboard. And then let me share or maybe the polar opposite, someone who is very into sharks, and it's all about trying to educate people, especially young people, right, about their importance. Okay, so complete opposite use of their life as far as, in this case, trying to help and protect the species.
On average, 5 people die from shark attacks every year in the entire world, and people kill 100 million sharks, right? So I always ask kids this: 5 people, 100 million sharks. Should we be afraid of sharks, or should they be afraid of us? I'm Jillian Morris. I'm a shark conservationist, and I live in Bimini, the Bahamas. Bimini is extremely small. The South Island, where I live, is about 6 or 7 miles long. There is an airport. There's one small store, one resort. The North Island, which we have to take a water taxi to get to, is where we do most of our grocery shopping. That's where there's a bank and a medical clinic. It's very remote, even though it is close to the United States. I absolutely love sharks. I've loved them my whole life. I probably saw my first shark when I was snorkeling when I was about 8. I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by all ocean creatures. Right, so even our dog loves sharks, or we like to think she does. So these are just some of her various shark toys. Ice cube trays, the bottle opener, cookie cutters, knife, and the ever important pizza wheel. This is one of the people. This is from Australia. This is another custom one. The hallway with a couple of signs. That was custom done. Grandma made these. There are shark sheets. And then my grandmother made us a whole shark quilt, actually. Sharks are predators. They are wild animals. And just like any wild animal, you need to be respectful of it. And they're not man-eating monsters. They do not actively hunt humans. But they do need to be respected like any other animal. So I don't swim up and hug them or try and cuddle with them. I do love them, but I do respect that they are a wild animal. And when I go into the ocean, I'm in their world. I'm in their house, and I have to be mindful of that. I really find my time in the ocean with sharks, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's probably not a word people would use to describe swimming with sharks, but for me, that's really what it is. It's really that connection and being in their world and on their terms. In my experience, taking people out and showing them sharks has proven to be very, very powerful in changing their opinion, their ideas about these animals. So if you can get to kids when they're young and give them facts versus misconceptions, we can make a change, and that's why I started Sharks for Kids. Through Sharks for Kids, we visit schools and do in-person talks. We offer materials online, and we help teachers in turn bring that curriculum into their classroom. You're scared of sharks. But believe it or not, chances are there are things you're already actually doing to help these animals and to help our oceans. I guarantee there are things you're already doing. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So I live on a really tiny island, so my access to people is limited. The population is pretty small, so in order to reach more people and spread shark education and shark awareness, Skype has been an invaluable tool to reach a lot of people all over the world from my tiny little island. And I wouldn't otherwise be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to talk to a school in England, Australia, China, India, all in the same day and reach all these kids if it weren't for programs like Skype. Yeah, or an air tank, right? Because I can only hold my breath for so long, and I certainly can't breathe underwater, so I have to take my own air with me. So if you think about the backpack you brought to school today, my backpack... Change doesn't happen immediately. It takes time, and one person at a time, we can change the way the world sees and thinks about sharks.
Do you think you're making a difference?
I definitely think I'm making a difference in some small way. Each day I speak to a lot of kids, and if one of those kids, if I talk to 100 students in a day and one of them decides to not buy a shark product, decides to be a shark biologist when they grow up, goes home and tells their parents, guess what, 100 million sharks are being killed. If one kid does that, then I think I've made a difference. So that's what I can hope, is that each day I'm able to connect with one person and it changes their mind, and maybe they're not afraid of sharks, or now they want to see them and they're excited about them, or they want to learn more. I think that that's really powerful because change happens one person at a time.
So again, this is one of the reasons also why education I think is so important, because as we learn the facts, then we can make better decisions. You know, when we operate completely out of fear, oh, I'm just afraid of sharks. Well, why? And it's absolutely important to be respectful. But again, if we can, be unnecessarily concerned. Some people never go in the oceans because they're afraid of being bitten by sharks. They don't quite understand how low the actual risk is, and so forth. But again, amazing species that have been on this planet for so long, and they deserve to be here, and also we need them here as well.